Welcome to a special edition of the Apple Circle podcast. This is iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Pro launch day. The phones are finally out. Matt and I have them in our hands, and we thought instead of doing a deep dive into news and stuff like that, we just give you our honest first impressions. We just got these phones a few hours ago. We've got them set up, and I know both of us have some hot takes and some controversial opinions. And we want to help you decide whether or not you should upgrade this year. And if you do upgrade, should you go 14 Pro or 14 Pro Max? Because I think both of us might be regretting a certain decision we made. So let's just jump into it. Housekeeping aside, Matt, what phone did you go with? What color, capacity, size? Tell me what happened.
All right, so I've got two. I've got the purple, you can see here, the purple 14 Pro regular, and then I have the 14 Pro Max in silver. I think that's the name. But yeah, I got these two. I originally intended to get the 14 Pro Max as my actual phone, my daily, and then the 14 Pro, the purple one, was mainly for the video purposes, things like that. We'll talk about our opinions in a second, but that is what I have on my hands. That's what I've used. I didn't get the 14, the regular, just because I'm waiting for the 14 Plus, because I think it's just going to be a little bit more interesting. It doesn't seem like buying the 14 makes any sense for content at this point. But yeah, what about you? What do you got?
So I also went Max this year, which I don't know if I'm entirely happy with, but I've got the 14 Pro Max. Let me take the case off. I actually did buy an Apple case because they have...
What case
what's
did you
that
get?
new one? I got the... It's not saddle brown. What do they call it?
Oh, it's like kind of orangey brown, like...
Yeah, it's got a name, and I don't have the box in front of me, so I don't know. I'll look it up in a minute, but I got whatever the... Oh, Ember or something? Whatever it is.
Saddle brown replacement, whatever that is.
I'm going to look up what the name is in a moment, but I did get that for the Pro Max, which I actually really like the case a lot. But I went with, again, I'm boring, the sort of space black, or what are they calling it this year? Deep black.
That's space black.
Space black.
Well, I don't know. I'm confused.
I don't know. They're naming... Their colors are
deep
weird.
purple,
The names are weird.
black.
Space black. So, one Pro Max, 128 gig, because I don't need a bunch of storage. And where do I start? Give me your first impressions as I try to gather my thoughts, because I just got everything switched over. First off, tell me not only your first impressions, but what was the setup process like for you? Because I think we sort of had some different issues during setup.
Oh, actually, for me, it was fine. There was a worry that I think a lot of people had, and it seemed like there was some initial reports that there was, in fact, issues with the eSIM process and activating your phone. Just because this is new, a lot of people aren't converted to eSIM, and having to do that on the day of seemed like it would be an issue. I had already been on eSIM because my phone was running on eSIM since the iPhone 13 Pro, so that was an issue. I just transferred it over. It took like maybe 45 seconds, process finished, and that's it. I didn't have any issues. I didn't even have to try one time or another time, but you... did have some issues. You had to keep trying it again, right?
Yeah, I did. So I bought this unlocked. All the phones I usually have done have been unlocked, just out of the carrier program, just full price, just because it's easier to switch that way and I can trade in. So when I went through the process, first of all, I should say there is a 16.0.1 update specifically for this issue. And I was reading last night that Apple said, well, if you have issues, first off, you should just do the software update. If not, you can like go past the activation prompt, then go back. It's sort of confusing because it really depends how you choose to set up your iPhone. So for me, I did like the local transfer. Like it asks you, how do you want to do it? Let's say, let's do the quick transfer. So you sort of scan the Apple Watch like little mirage of an icon there with your screen, and it sort of links the phone together that way. And that's how it transfers Apple ID and sort of the basics of iCloud information. And that's how it attempted to do my SIM transfer. So it said, hey, I see this number. Do you want to transfer this from one phone to the other? I said, yes. The process seems super cool. And I should say I was already on eSIM, so just going from eSIM to eSIM. It says like double click the side button to confirm. So I did that. And then I tried that 3 times and it failed. It just said unable to activate, like contact T-Mobile to figure it out. Like we don't know what the problem is. I assumed it was just like that setup sort of bug, the launch day issue, so I didn't give any thought to it and figured I'd update the phone and try again later. And then when I went through the restore process, it shows, asks you how do you want to restore data? You want to do it locally or do it through iCloud. I chose iCloud backup. And then again, in the iCloud restore section, for whatever reason, asking me again, hey, do you want to transfer your phone? Do you want to transfer the eSIM? I said yes. And then for whatever reason, 4th time was a charm and it happened to work. And then it just sort of auto-populated. I saw the bars sort of populate up at the top, and then it just worked. So it seems like once it works, you're good to go. And then hopefully you can sort of transfer from one phone to the other. But I think what the big issue is going to be is for those who are trying to transfer from their physical SIM to an eSIM, or even from that very first eSIM to the 14 Pro. That's where it's going to be an issue, at least, especially if you're going from a non-iOS 16 phone to a new 16 phone. But it seems like after that, it's okay. So I got it up and running, and that seemed to work. So definitely going to be a little touch and go there for a lot of people. If you have issues, either try to skip the prompt and then go back, go into settings and do it later, or just update the phone to 16.0.1 and then try again. That should fix the issue.
Yeah, that seems to be like the best way to go. I wasn't ready to switch over my SIM just yet, so I skipped the prompt initially, and then once I was in the software doing it, it was fine. There was no issues there. So yeah, it seems like more the initial activation seems to be the issue. But other than that, I mean, no real issues or anything. It started up just like I hoped it would. I guess first impressions of the phone is basically what I expected, which is that the phone basically feels the same. I don't like the purple. And the dynamic island is very cool, but it quickly fades into the background in a good way. I think in a good way. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's like it feels like the same phone. The things I haven't been able to test yet are the things I actually care about the most. So things like camera, things like battery life. So once I am able to test those, my opinions will probably change. But just in first impressions, it's the same phone. It just has a few cool little tweaks here and there. I really like the dynamic island. It's just it has quickly become part of the phone, even in just the few hours that I've been using it.
It's hard to express. Like, Apple obviously is a marketing machine, and they do some really incredible ads, and it looks really cool. And like you said, Matt, I feel the same way. It fades into the phone, not in a bad way, but it sort of loses its spark after about 5 minutes. Like, okay, it works. And I honestly, through my time using the phone in the past couple of hours, I don't know if I've actually had an incoming use of the dynamic island, or I haven't switched between anything. I haven't played any music. It's just sort of been there. And I will say, in my experience, the screen is so much more immersive when you don't have that notch. Like, just having that little bit of extra space on the sides and on the top makes the phone feel different. It makes it feel new. And I'm really liking it. Even if it didn't change at all, even as a static island, it looks very cool up there at the top, and I like that. The one thing I will say, and I think we're both sort of feeling this, we both went Max this year. We had discussed this before. Yep. I also, like you, here are my boxes. I got the Pro Max, and then I bought a regular 14 Pro, not because I need two phones, but because I wanted to have the ability to try both and then pick one and then return the other after sort of the 2-week launch period, because I wanted to love the Pro Max and try something new, but I wanted my 14 Pro as a safety because I do think the size is really good. And I think both of us hadn't used a Pro Max phone, at least exclusively, since, or I should say a large screen iPhone, since the XS Max from 2018? 10s Max?
19?
2019?
No,
2018.
Yeah.
So it's been 4 years.
A while for both of us. Yeah.
So we've used them occasionally, but to use one as your phone, and I'm torn. I'll say my first thoughts a couple hours into it. In some instances, the keyboard's more spacious. I feel like I got more room on there. I was watching a couple of videos, and like it looks really. It's nice to have like a big screen. Like I had a TikTok loaded, and like, man, like you can see. It's not like you see more, but it's just this bigger experience, which is sort of nice. But the phone is also just noticeably bigger, and in some instances, like with the home screen, you're not getting any more real estate. You're just getting bigger, blown up versions of your apps. And in that instance, I'm like, I don't know if it's worth the trade-off. I don't know if I'm loving the sacrifice of the Pro Max just yet. I still think the 6.1-inch form factor might be the sweet spot, and I might have to switch back. We'll see how this weekend treats me, but I'm on the fence. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I'm feeling the same way. When I'm actually just using my phone sitting here at my desk or whatever, and I'm like typing, like you said, or if I'm watching a video, it's very nice to have that size. It does feel better in a way. But then when I went to go grab lunch, put it in my pocket, put it in my phone holder in my car, like it feels clunky. And will I get used to it? Yes. I mean, I had the XS Max, so it's not like I've never had a Max phone or a big phone. It's just, I just don't like it. I think the size of the regular Pro phone, even though I would never get it in this purple color, is way better. It just feels better. The reason it is nice having something that feels different, but it doesn't feel different in the way that I want it to feel different.
Not in a good way, I feel like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And then I'm trying to think what else about this. Yeah, I just like the size a lot. I'm used to it. I would still get the silver if I end up going for not the max. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we're in the same boat. I guess the only thing that would really sway me is if for whatever reason, and at least on day one, which this is not a fair test because I'm setting everything up and everything, but at least today the battery life is not good. So we'll see how that goes and changes over time. But that's really the only reason for me to want this phone is because of the battery life. The screen size, I'm perfectly fine with the 6.1 inch. I mean, I've been using that for a year or more than a year with the other phones, so it's like obviously I'm used to it, so it's fine. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. I guess there is an argument that the notches, or not the notch, sorry, the dynamic island is smaller just because of the ratio to screen. So I guess there's something to be said about that, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It's a dilemma. We're gonna have to try it out, use it in the real world for more than just a few hours, and see how it goes. Have you seen or have you used the purple in real life?
I haven't seen it. I have no desire to get it. What I've heard is a lot of people are disappointed because they expected a more bright, vibrant, colorful purple, and it seems in all the real world scenarios I've seen like more of a dull, like kind of very desaturated purple. Is that an accurate description?
Definitely. The way I would explain it is it's like either space gray or specific Pacific blue, or the green, the midnight green. It's that shade, but with purple instead of the other colors. That's what it looks like, basically. So if you're into purple, I think you will actually like this. I just don't like purple, so this is not my style. And I actually like this better than it being a super vibrant purple. I know people have been saying they wanted that, but I don't know. I don't know if that would look very good. When we were in the Apple Store picking this up, I was wanting to look at the space black because I wanted to see, how much different is it compared to the space gray, which I'm holding here now. And I will say, not that different. It's very similar to the space gray. I think it was. I held them next to each other, and I was hoping the space black would be black, and it's still very much gray. It's just a darker shade of gray. So that is why whatever phone I get, whether I do go max or go back to the regular, I am sticking with the silver. It is that time for me. I love it. I got the stainless steel watch. I'm going to go for the stainless steel on the outside of my phone. So I've decided on the color, but do you like your space black?
I like the space black. It's a good color. I talked about it before. I got the Sierra Blue last year. I got suckered into it for the special color, and I regretted it because I just wasn't a fan of the color, and it was in a case anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I wanted something different this time, so I went with the space black. I will say we got a couple of comments from those in our work chat at the JFL network about the side railings of the phone being more grippy. And it's sort of hard to describe this, but I was sitting here now and I was looking at it. I was like, maybe there's something to that. It's still stainless steel, but I can't tell if it feels grippier because there's some difference with the coating or if it's because the stainless steel rails on this phone, my 13 Pro from last year, have just been sort of, gunked up with finger grease and sweat and all that fun stuff over the last 365 days. Do you notice it on your phone? Does it feel different? Does it feel better at all in material-wise?
I'm testing it right now, and there's definitely a difference, but it feels like this is a new phone and this is an old phone. That's what I'm feeling. It doesn't. I don't think there's actually a difference. I think it's just new versus old. If I remember correctly, we kind of said the same thing last year when we got the 13s. I feel like that's a conversation we had, but yeah, I don't think there's an actual difference. I think these 13s are just gunked up at this point. But let's talk
always on display. Another big feature here.
Yeah.
I will say we were in a meeting about a couple hours ago for about an hour, and it was nice for me. I had my 14 Pro Max on a charger sort of off screen, sort of out of the way. It was nice to glance there and see incoming notifications as they came in. There was something like, maybe it's iPhone addiction, but comforting, I want to say. That's a horrible word to say, but like
Yeah, that
of
doesn't
having
sound
that
good.
screen on. It's a horrible thing. I'm just going to admit that. But it was something so cool about having that display always on and seeing incoming notifications as they happened. And I feel like if you are, sitting at a desk or you're working or you're somewhere where it's not rude to have your phone sitting on a table, it is kind of nice to glance down and see the time or to see any incoming notifications. It's way better than doing the whole Apple Watch wrist move, which my watch, it's another story. My Series 7 battery is the battery life took a dump the past 2 weeks. It's awful, so I'm charging it, which is why my wrist is bare for like the first time ever. But I feel like you do that move with the Apple Watch, you got to bring it up, twist it, you do that whole thing. With it sitting there always on, that has been nice. So far, I'm really liking that. I know there's been some controversy about battery life, but I'm a fan of the always on display. What are your sort of initial thoughts on that front?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm a fan of it. Let's see. Oh, that's the wrong phone. I got too many phones floating around. So you can see it here, and then I will click the power button, and it will go dim. And I know in the initial like impressions and reviews before the phones were out, everyone was saying like it just looks like the screen is dim. It's not actually always on display kind of thing. But I get what they're saying now. It really does just dim the screen to not even that dark. It's not that dark. It's very legible, very visible. But I like it. I think it's something that you're just going to quickly get used to, and you're just going to expect it to be there. Is it a must-have feature? I don't know. If it ends up like killing battery life, I feel like I'd be okay to turn it off. I don't think I'm quite there where like this is a must-have. But I like it. I will say though, even though I knew this was one of the features and everything, when I first set up my phone, I was letting it sit there, it was going through iCloud, downloading everything. And I was like, why is the screen not turning off? And I was like, oh, like even me, I fell for it. I know what it is, and I still fell for it because it really is that bright. It just dims it a little bit. I think it's cool though. I like the way it looks. I think assuming battery life is okay, I think Apple did it right. I think this is the best implementation of always on I've seen, although you can't really customize it. So hopefully that happens in the future. But I just mean in terms of aesthetics, I do think this looks the best. I like it.
Now, there might be a couple of people watching this video a little bummed out saying, hey, I ordered a phone. It's not here in time. I don't know what to do. Is there no way I can get it early? I will say if you're watching this on launch weekend or launch day or the weeks after it, there's actually a pretty good shot that you might be able to get a phone on launch day. I saw this morning a number of stores in the US and Canada at least had a lot of phones for same day pickup. And I saw a lot of people who actually had October ship dates just go to the store and pick one up or order it for like same day courier delivery through Apple and just got their phone weeks earlier. So I will say you should definitely check around and see what your store has in stock because you might get lucky and be able to pick up a store or pick up a phone from store today. And also, I don't know about your experience, but my local Apple store, the Irvine Spectrum Apple store, which usually is a happen in place, there wasn't a line. I had a 9:15 pickup. I got there at about 8:55 this morning, and it was a little weird when I rolled into the parking lot. I saw no line. I'm like, maybe it's weird. Maybe they were lining up somewhere else, but there was no line. And last year when I had an 8:30 pickup, there was a huge line for the 13 Pro. And the 14 Pro seems way more exciting. I talked to the employee a little bit inside, and he had said that there were a lot of people there earlier this morning that Apple turned away that were looking for like a same day pickup, and they said come back later. So maybe they're holding that inventory for later. But in terms of like if you're worried about lines or you got a check-in window, at least my experience, I just walk right up. They said, oh, and they still did, for whatever reason, the store was like almost empty. They're like, oh, you still got to wait because you're a little early for your appointment by 10 minutes. It's like, whatever. Waited about 3 or 4 minutes and they let me in. But what was the experience for you like at your local Apple store? Was it happening?
There was definitely people and they were busy, but there was probably 5 people in front of me in line. And then as I stood in line, another 5 to 10 stood in line behind me. So I mean, there was definitely people there. And one of the employees, I was talking to him, and he said in the morning when they opened, the line was like around. It's in a mall, but it was like around the corner in the mall. So there was definitely people. And I will say there was the person that came up behind me. He was looking. He didn't have a reservation. He's just like, I want a phone, and they're like, okay, yeah, we got it. What do you want? You got the thing, and they just had his phone. So. It seems like they had a lot of inventory for people that were just buying it, but he did buy it and then, or I guess he didn't buy it. He put the reservation in and then he had to come back like in 45 minutes, like for actual reservation time, which is how they're doing it these days. But yeah, it didn't feel any, I'm trying to remember to last year. The difference is last year I was there like first thing. This year the system was all glitchy when we were doing the pre-orders, so I had an 8 a.m. slot and then it wouldn't process my Apple Pay, so I had to go back and it was a whole mess. So I had to be there at like 9. So maybe that's the difference, but what? Yeah.
Maybe that's the trick is moving forward. We should just do 9
yeah.
o'clock or whatever. Because I just like walk right in. It was simple. I will say it was interesting. This time the employee asked me not only if I was doing a trade-in, but if I was doing an activation in store. I think that maybe, I don't know if you got the same.
No, they didn't.
They asked you, and she asked me that. I had 2 orders, and they asked me for both. I think at least at the one I was at, maybe they're helping people with the eSIM activation process, and so it was a little glitchy. But that was my experience there. And I guess the big question, Matt, is should you upgrade? If you're watching this video and you're in the hype of all the iPhone 14 Pro videos and you're wondering if it's worth it, what's the cutoff for you? Because I know we have a couple of people in JFL who are coming from older phones who are really happy, and you're sort of getting that compound upgrade because you're getting all the features that came last year plus the stuff this year. In that sense, it's a lot more exciting. Do you think if you have a 13 Pro, should you spend the money and go 14 Pro?
Oh, that's the question of all questions. I think if you are not going to utilize the camera system to its full potential, meaning you're not going to be using ProRAW to get those 48 megapixel files, you're not going to be shooting, tons of video or anything like that, and you're basically just a casual user when it comes to the camera especially, then if you already have a 13 Pro, you're going to be very happy with this. Because I know, Robert, I haven't tested the camera myself very much, except for a few camera test things I did in my office here, which is not very much. But you actually did do a comparison between the 13 Pro and the 14 Pro camera. So what are your thoughts on that? Because that on paper is one of the biggest differences, right? So
honestly, I was surprised. And really before that initial iPhone review embargo, I was optimistic and skeptical that the camera difference would be a big deal. Because you think about it, 12 megapixels versus 48, you're going to see a massive difference. And yeah, Apple's pixel binning, and that was like one of the comments I saw pop up a lot. People were like, well, are you always using the 48 megapixel, or are you only using it in some instances? Basically, if you shoot in RAW, you're going to utilize all the pixels in that 48 megapixel sensor. But if you're shooting regular photos, it's going to be 12 megapixels, but you're getting basically 4 times what you normally would.
You're still using the full sensor, but it's almost like shrinking it down into a 12 megapixel. That's probably the easiest way to think of it.
Exactly. And I will say, after doing the side-by-side photos myself and then editing that video and looking at the side-by-side sort of in a blind, photo test, I was, I want to say disappointed, because that's not really right. Maybe a little underwhelmed. In some instances, you can definitely see like textured walls where the 14 Pro is sharper and you're getting more detail. But honestly, in like day-to-day photos, like I do a lot of just regular photo taking of like my baby or of like random stuff on my desk or whatever the case may be, just like, photos you take on your phone. I think you'd be hard-pressed to notice a difference unless you were like looking side by side. I was honestly surprised that the difference was so underwhelming. That being said, if you are going to jump in, like you said, shoot raw photos, or I think the file size is like 75 megabytes or something, they're pretty big, you're going to enjoy it. But for me, even in video mode, the difference was negligible. So I was surprised on that. So I thought that this is going to be, the camera system to end all camera systems, and this is going to be a huge leap. And honestly, just goes to show, I guess, specs aren't everything. Spec sheet isn't everything. And maybe Apple was just doing things too well before, but not a huge difference for me in the photos I took and the comparisons I made. So not a bad thing, but just not as exciting as I initially thought it would be.
Yeah, and I being that is probably the biggest actual feature change year over year besides the dynamic island, I mean, is it worth upgrading from the 13 Pro? I'm going to say, unless you're like us who are just freaks about this kind of stuff and we love it and we live in the industry, no, it's not worth it. If you're coming from anything before that, I think yes, you're going to, I mean, the 12, like for instance, the jump from the 12 to the 13 Pro in terms of camera, even though the hardware wasn't that different, was major. Like it was very noticeable. The 12 camera was good, but the 13 camera was great. So it's like, jumping from the 12 to the 14, I mean, you're getting an excellent upgrade there, or anything before that. So, and that kind of applies to every part of the phone. So you're getting the dynamic island, you're getting the always on display, the brighter display, A16 if you care about that kind of stuff. So like, you're getting a better phone if you're coming from an older phone, but just 13 Pro, unless you're like us, it's probably not worth it. I'd save your money.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to think about the most exciting iPhone upgrade, and I think it's got to be the 7 to the 10. That was like the biggest. Everything was so different. Face ID, all that. I will say, like you said, Matt, I agree. If you're like in this and like you want the new thing because you want the new thing, then get the 14 Pro. But if you have a 13 Pro and you're happy with it, I wouldn't really consider it. And even if you've got a 12 or an 11 that's still good, if you want to wait, I'd say wait. I think that if you're on the fence about it and you're thinking about it, then you probably do want that new phone. But I don't think, despite all of the hype, it's worth running out and getting this like day one. Yeah. I think it's worth playing with. Definitely go to an Apple store and try it out. I think as soon as the dynamic island becomes more optimized by third-party apps and we see that mature a little bit more and we see some more customization with the always on display, those features might come together to make it more compelling. And I will say, even if it's not the camera that we wanted or we thought, when you put all the things together, it's the camera, it's the dynamic island, it's the always on display, better battery life. All that together does make a really compelling package. And if you've got a, somewhat older phone and you're looking for an upgrade, you're going to be happy. But I think that if you have the 13 Pro, I would not beat yourself up about it and be like, man, I need to get the 14 Pro because it's 5 million times better. The dynamic island is cool, but I don't think it's worth $1,000 or whatever the price would be to upgrade just to get that. It's cool, but I don't think it's worth it. But maybe, who knows? Maybe in 6 months I'll be eating my words.
Yeah, I mean, maybe once I test this camera and really put it to use those Pro RAW photos, I'm going to be blown away. But as it stands now, it's a new iPhone. It's exciting, but I mean, honestly, it's the same thing as every year. If you have like the latest phone, or the previous generation phone, you probably don't need to upgrade. If you're coming from anything before that, then you'll be fine to upgrade if you want. Kind of the same story every year, but I'm happy with these phones. The really question for us is just, are we going to be keeping the Max or the regular? And that is still the question. So I'm sure we will be giving updates as we continue on for the coming weeks.
Yeah, if you guys are watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on the 14 Pro and Pro Max. Did you pick one up? Did you go with the 14? Maybe you just bought the iPhone 14. You're happy about it. Let us know down below. And of course, if you're listening to this in audio form, give us a call and leave us a voicemail or send a text, 949-354-3508. Let us know your thoughts on the 14 Pro and Pro Max. And I think, Matt, by this time next week, next Friday, when we get our watches and AirPods in, I will have officially made up my mind on whether I'm keeping the Pro Max or going Pro.
I think
so we'll
for
see.
Me too. Yeah, and then, this is a little bit of a shorter episode this week. We wanted to make sure we can get it out as fast as possible with the phones in our hand. We'll probably end up doing the same thing next week with the watches and the AirPods Pro. So, we want to make sure we're not talking in the past, right? The phones are out, the watches are out. We want to make sure we're up to date. So that's why this is a little bit shorter. But, yeah, I mean, we're excited. We're in Apple season. The products are coming out. So we got 3 weeks of releases. I'm excited. This is fun.
So be sure to stay tuned to the channel and podcast for more stuff. Like Matt said, we'll have our quick reactions. I'm very excited for the Ultra next week and the AirPods, maybe even a little bit more than the phone.
Yeah,
that'll be fun, and then we should return to our regularly scheduled podcasting after that. Be sure to stay tuned, though, because we've got a lot of good stuff coming up. Matt, good luck with your Pro Max, and we'll see which phone wins this time next week on the next episode of the Apple Circle podcast. Happy iPhone 14 launch day, everyone. Enjoy your brand new iPhone.